This Long Blue Leadership conversation was recorded on November 7th, 2025.
Welcome to Long Blue Leadership, the podcast where we share insights on leadership through the lives and experiences of Air Force Academy graduates. I'm Navira Walkowitz, class of 99. In this edition of Long Blue Leadership, we're honored to welcome a distinguished leader whose career spans military service, national security, and public office. Congressman August Pfluger is a proud graduate of the United States Air Force Academy class of 2000 and currently represents the 11th Congressional District of Texas in the U.S. House of Representatives. Before entering Congress, Congressman Pfluger served for nearly 2 decades in the United States Air Force, rising to the rank of colonel. He is currently a member of the Air Force Reserve. As an F-15 and F-22 fighter pilot, he logged over 300 combat hours in defense of our nation. He has also served as a member of the National Security Council, bringing strategic insight to some of the most complex global threats we face today. Since taking office in 2021, Congressman Pfluger has remained deeply committed to strengthening our national defense. He currently serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee, two critical platforms from which he continues to represent and lead. He is the chairman of the Republican Study Committee and serves as the chairman of the Air Force Academy's Board of Visitors, appointed to the BOV by the Speaker of the House in 2023 and elected by his colleagues to serve as chair. Whether in the halls of Congress or in the cockpit, Congressman Pfluger's career has been defined by a steadfast commitment to courageous service and leadership. Congressman Pfluger, welcome to Long Blue Leadership.
Thank you, Navir. It's an honor to be here with you.
Well, we are so glad to have you. And there's something that I want to jump right into because it really occurred to me how odd this is. But you served for nearly 2 decades. And when I say nearly 2 decades in the Air Force, 19 years and 4 months, and then you pulled the plug. You didn't go to retirement right then. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, this is not something that most financial advisors would advise you of doing. And I'll tell you, this was a journey in faith because at almost 20 years, September of 2019, we made a decision. My wife and I made a decision to run for Congress, which meant that we got out of the active duty, joined the reserves, and started a campaign, something that just a month prior we had absolutely no intention of doing and had not even talked about doing.
Wow.
Running for office was something that was always of interest, but certainly not at 19 years and 4 months. So the opportunity came up. I had a couple of phone calls from friends and family to say that the representative who represented my hometown and where I grew up was retiring after 16 years. And a lot of factors, and I'll really take you down this faith journey, a lot of factors happened that we couldn't ignore. And we literally moved back to my hometown of San Angelo that I had not lived in for over 20 years and started a campaign, which, as you can imagine, it took a lot of courage from my wife, from my family, 3 little girls who we uprooted and went through this. But I'm so glad that we did it. But it wasn't without, I can say anxiety and just, the fear of the unknown maybe and not knowing exactly what would happen. So when you say and use the words, we burned the ships, that was the moment in time that we literally burned the ships and ran a campaign with every piece of our heart and soul.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that a little bit because, we have listeners that make these pivotal moments in their careers. They make these decisions that really shape them. What was it about that time other than, the incumbent was going to retire? Like, why you? Why then? Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Well, this is pre-COVID. And the thought of running for office always sounds good. If you have that interest, you're like, oh, okay, that'd be great. Well, then when you kind of get down to the brass tacks that you're going to have to put in 14 to 16-hour days and learn how to talk to people about what's important in this district, then it kind of changes things. But honestly, there were signs and things that pointed me and my wife in this direction that we couldn't ignore. And when you look at this type of district, it's really in the past 100 years, there's only been about 6 representatives. So it's not one of those things you say, well, maybe we'll wait for next time. the opportunity was there. There was a window of time. It was about 30 days where we had to make a decision to literally move from Northern Virginia back to Texas and start a whole new career. And in doing so, forego the pension for what would now be 5 or 6 years, because I've had to work as a reservist to, kind of get back to that point. So there was a financial piece to it. There was a career that was going very well, that, maybe are we giving that up, and what happens if we don't win? And then, all these unknowns. So I will say it was definitely the biggest professional decision that I've ever made in my career.
So you had talked about some of your family members, you had phone calls. It sounds like, your faith and your family are a big part of your decision making and, when you go forward with things. I think you've talked about your grandfather having been someone that inspired you to go into the Air Force. Who are those key players in your family that have really inspired you in your big leadership decisions?
Yes, you're right. I had two grandfathers that served in World War II. One was a pilot, and that led me, to make the first decision to go to the Air Force Academy, and that stayed with me. We had nobody in my family who was in politics. I mean, not a single person. In fact, a lot of my family, I had several great uncles and, different family members that I'm close to, and they said, what? Are you sure you want to do this? And why, don't you have a really good Air Force career, and you've been able to, rise in the ranks and all the things that you've tried to do? But honestly, it was kind of a word of wisdom to say, if you're going to do this, have some good reasons. Like, why do you want to do this? And the district that I get to represent in my hometown, we have military bases, agriculture, and energy. And I love all three of those things. And I think of those as national security level entities that really dovetail very nicely with my first part of my professional career.
That makes sense. So it really was an extension. This new path in your journey was really an extension of what you had done in uniform and active duty, and now being able to give it back to your hometown district and the patrons in there as well.
Absolutely. And
Wow.
and I in the campaign talked about how important it was to be able to provide our own food. We have a lot of cattle ranchers that are in my district. That you don't want to be dependent on some other country, especially an adversarial country, for your food needs. And the same thing for energy production, that you can't be dependent for energy needs on your adversaries. So those were things that I was able to really talk about. And I mean, oh my gosh, after I actually was elected and got into office, I mean, they became front and center, and still are, of that discussion. And I think that was the really interesting piece about having been deployed. We were stationed all over the world, almost 7 years outside of the United States on 3 different continents. And to be able to tie it together and kind of bring that back home and communicate why this place where I grew up and now where I live and where I represent is so important to our national security.
Well, you talked a little bit about earlier about, you weren't even sure if you were going to get elected. And then when you did, you had to go out and talk to people and really understand the challenges. What is that journey like when it's completely new, right? It's not the same. You're not getting into a cockpit. You're not an instructor pilot now. Now you're representing all them. How do you approach that new path? Because I think that's something when our leaders take this leap of faith and they're looking at, well, how do I approach it? It's completely different from anything I've done. I think they'd like to know how you did it so well.
Well, thanks for the question. It was a huge challenge in, uh, being a squadron commander, having been an instructor pilot or a mission commander, and having led in actual combat. That was everything. I mean, I didn't know anything about politics, but what I did know was how to map out a plan and how to put the pieces and parts together. And I knew that nobody was going to outwork me. I mean, come on, when you have a Sammy on Saturday morning, you got to wake up and make your bed and do all the things to get that weekend pass. I mean, you're going to work hard. And so I knew that I had a competitive advantage on the work ethic and the ability to plan. And so really the thing that I realize now 6 years later, is that I think people, what they really appreciated was that I wasn't a career politician, that the things that I was saying and campaigning on were like true passions, and they weren't empty promises. I told them, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm proud to report I've done every single one of those things that I told them that I would do. And it's because we were instructed so well, both at school and then, as members of the active duty Air Force, about how to follow through and be persistent and just carry through with what you said you were going to do. I mean, integrity is a big piece of this. But I will tell you also that now, staying in touch after being elected, I mean, I travel throughout these 20 counties all the time, and you have to have some thick skin, because you're going to get some feedback from people that is not always flattering. And they're going to ask you, well, why did you vote this way? Or what happened here? And why are you not doing this? And this is expensive. And I mean, so you have to be willing to take that feedback, which, by the way, sitting in a fighter pilot debrief, I mean, that was the perfect training for having thick skin, to understand that what people are trying to tell you isn't critical with substance, that you really need to listen to them and try to solve these problems.
So earlier you had talked about, I think there are these things that you did at the academy. No one is going to outwork you. Have you always been that type of person, someone that, just kind of works really hard? Or is that something that you kind of developed at the academy?
I developed it at the academy, but I would say I came in with a good work ethic, and then was challenged by our classmates, who are amazing. It's like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, I'm really not that smart and not that fast and not that, whatever, because you see all these amazing people. But yes, work ethic was, I mean, I look at it now, having administered how many nominations to service academies. I mean, dozens and dozens of kids that I've gotten a chance to work with over the past 5 years, who are absolutely incredible. And I'm like, I don't know if I could get in at this point in time, because they're just incredible. And I had to work very hard at everything I ever did. Everything I ever achieved was because of hard work. It wasn't because I was the best. It was because I just, at the end of the day, worked very hard to get it. I think that's a lesson that we learned during 4 years at the academy, but it has served me very well in this profession.
Was there a particular time at the academy where you worked really hard and it didn't go your way? And, how did you overcome that? Because I think, sometimes, the outcome is, if I give it all and I work really hard, I'm going to get to where I want to go. And if that wasn't the case, how did that actually change the trajectory or shape you?
That there were multiple times at the academy that, you work hard for something. I mean, I came in as a recruited athlete, had some injuries, and so didn't get a chance to finish all 4 years. That was hard to go through that process, and it just didn't work out. Or you're just not good enough, and then that was the case too, for me on the football team. But there were just better people, which is awesome, and that shaped who I am now, because it is not just about how hard you work. That's a huge piece of it, but you also have to have good timing. You have to have some luck. You have to, be in the right place and have been brought up by the right people. And when the opportunity strikes, you've got to be able to take advantage of that timing to do that. And those lessons, I absolutely remember. That there was one instance where I really, really wanted to go to do this exchange program in Egypt, and they were going to bring some of the political science department over there. Well, apparently my grades were not in the right area to be selected for this program. I think I was an alternate or something.
Hey, you
And
made
so,
the alternate list. That's good.
right, I mean, that's, it's not nothing. But I was very disappointed, because I thought I worked hard, maybe not hard enough on the grades, but I had worked hard to be a part of the conversation to go. Well, didn't get a chance to do it. So I always had that in the back of my mind. Well, I went to Egypt, but it was as a congressman. I led a congressional delegation of 6 or 7 members. We met with the president of Egypt and had very serious conversations about the negotiation for what Gaza has now, the peace deal that we have gotten to, and had went to the president's palace, got to sit down right next to him and talk to him for over an hour. So I always kept that in the back of my mind, that I was going to Egypt one day.
That's right. And honestly, you worked really, really hard. You didn't get there, but you kept that fire going, because you knew at some point you were going to. So it did end up working out in that case for sure. One of the things that I find really interesting and fascinating about you is, as you talk about these different experiences you've had, you said they've shaped you. And when you're in the military, can you share a time when you maybe were in a position that it wasn't what you'd hoped for, you thought it was going to be, but you found it to be incredibly rewarding? Was there anything in that kind of space that happened to you?
Yes, several times. You want things, you think you want things, and then it doesn't work out. You don't get selected, and always in the back of my mind, every young lieutenant wants to be a weapons officer, or wants to then be a squadron commander of a fighter squadron. That's just the competitive side of this, and I was no different. When it came time to select who the next squadron commanders were going to be, I'll never forget my operations group commander came to me and he said, "Well, we got a problem. We have 6 really talented lieutenant colonels. You're all promoted below the zone, and we have 4 squadrons. So we're going to have to figure out a plan B for a couple of you, and I've got something in mind for you." He said, "I think that you should go be a deployed squadron commander of an OSS, an operational support squadron." He said, "We've got a war going on, a conflict with ISIS, and you'd be great." Well, that's not exactly an easy conversation to go home and to tell your spouse, "Oh, I just got told that I was going to deploy. I'm not going to be a fighter squadron commander here. I'm going to go somewhere else, and I'll be gone a year." So that was hard, but oh my goodness, what an experience professionally. Obviously, I miss my family, but this was the height of the conflict against ISIS. I had hundreds of people that I got a chance to work with, command, flying combat missions, doing something that mattered, working with our international partners. We were on an Emirati base, and so I worked with the Emiratis on a daily basis because we had almost 20 different weapon systems, 20 different aircraft there. And it was the highlight of my professional career. So God had a plan. It worked out much better than I could have ever engineered. And it turned out, minus the fact that I had to be gone for a year, obviously nobody likes that, but it turned out to be the best professional year of my Air Force career.
I find that really interesting because would that have been the last kind of position you held before going into the move for Congress? Is that correct?
Actually, I came back, was PCS to the Pentagon, worked for the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Goldfein,
Okay.
went to a year of War College equivalent in D.C., a fellowship program, and then was assigned to the White House, to the National Security Council for just about 2.5 months before we made 3 months before we made the decision to run for Congress.
So just a couple things happened after that. What an amazing run and the amazing leaders that you got to work with. So was that experience that when you were deployed as a squadron commander and then coming back, did that help shape your thoughts specifically to the Congress role? Because you talked about the very 3 important things, right? Energy, national security, and there was one more.
And
I missed
agriculture,
and
yes.
agriculture. Thank you. And so, um, you know, did that all kind of get settled in when you were in that transition piece from, squadron commander to your time at the Pentagon and the White House area?
Absolutely. I had a year as a deployed squadron commander, came back and worked a year at the Pentagon, which I didn't know how lucky that was. Uh, Most people get there 2 or 3 years, but worked directly for the Chief of Staff, heard all of the conversations between General Goldfein and Secretary Heather Wilson, and then had a year where I studied at a think tank on Middle East policy. It could not have been a better education, with a little bit of time in the White House to prepare me to run for Congress. I mean, you look back on that and you go, "Oh, so that's why. Oh, these steps were to prepare for this job now," which, I mean, just the fact that as a member of Congress, I've probably met with 10 or 15 heads of states one-on-one, presidents from different countries around the world, and to have that education, to be able to speak intelligently, at least somewhat intelligently on these issues, took the steps that I just went through right there.
And, something that I think is really interesting to what you just said, working with General Goldfein and with Secretary Wilson, There are so few Academy graduates that have had the opportunities to serve in Congress and to be in the role that you are. How many Air Force Academy grads do we have now? Have done this?
There's two currently serving, myself and Don Davis,
Mhm.
opposite sides of the aisle, but great friends. And there were only two prior. So there's only been four.
Oh my
And the first two were Heather Wilson was the first, and then
Yes.
Martha McSally. And I'll never forget when I got elected, Heather Wilson called me and she said, "Congratulations. You're finally keeping up with us ladies." And, and I thought it was great. But we need more graduates, honestly. And I don't care who's listening to this, what side of the aisle you're on. We need more Air Force Academy graduates. There are 9 West Pointers currently serving and 7 from Annapolis currently serving. And we've only had 4 total.
All right. It's out there now that we've got got our calling. So here we go. I want to ask you a question about, being in Congress. You are on several committees and you're in leading roles in them. Let's talk a little bit first about, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about the Board of Visitors because I think it's a great opportunity for our graduates to understand actually what the Board of Visitors actually does. So if you don't mind kind of sharing in your words, what your priorities are with the Board of Visitors and what that looks like, I think it'd be really helpful in educating our listeners.
Well, thank you. And it's an honor to be on the Board of Visitors. It's um, statutorily set up by Congress decades ago, and it basically provides an avenue of oversight, something that is appointed both legislatively by the Speaker of the House and by the Senate Majority Leader and also the President. And, we've got a number of several grads, but a number of senators and congressmen. And, again, one of these timing things that I didn't necessarily intend to run for the chairmanship, but we needed, I think, a graduate to do that. And I'm proud to be the chairman of this group. Charlie Kirk was on this board, and what a tragic situation that was. We've got a number of really passionate leaders, and our job really is to interact with the institution, to ask questions, and to report back directly to the Secretary of War and to the Secretary of the Air Force on the health and welfare of the institution, on any other issues that we think are important. And for me, kind of the driving principle is that I love this institution. The leadership lessons that I learned there and those that I hear from so many graduates are important well beyond military service. They're important for the rest of a graduate's life. And I want to make sure that everything that is going on there, the resources that are needed there, the schedule and the curriculum and the ability to train the next generation of young warriors, both for the space and the Air Force, are the best in the country, and that we are prepared no matter what, that those graduates can go do their job. So it really is an honor to be on the board, but then to be the chairman of it.
I can imagine that. And I think it really speaks volumes, the fact that, you're so passionate about it. You've taken what you've had from the academy, you've applied it in this role. What are the first things that I think you're looking at? You said you talked about the resources and kind of the schedule and things that are happening at the academy. What are the key things that you're looking at right now as a Board of Visitors?
Well, I think to start with, I mean, we all know you wake up early, you go to bed late, and you're trying to cram, 28 hours into 24. And so the number one thing that I want to see and work through is how are we continuing to innovate with the best training possible so that, you can't teach the solution to every problem, but you want to teach a framework of how to think. And that, there's going to be cadets that are challenged through their academic studies. There's going to be cadets that are challenged through their military studies. There's going to be cadets that are challenged athletically, and some that get all three of those. Well, I mean, obviously we all got all three, but no matter which piece of the puzzle fills, their time, they should get the training that teaches them how to respond in stressful situations, that teaches them how to function as a team, and that offers them the opportunity to honestly, to experience a little bit of failure while also knowing that success is right down the road, and that with a little grit, a little determination, and a little persistence, that they're going to get there. And that is a challenge. I mean, in a resource confined
Mhm.
uh, environment that we have right now, that's a big challenge. But that's why we have legislators, senators, and House members. They can go fight for those resources to make sure that they're getting that training that they need.
Thank you for sharing that. I think when you talk about, having that framework to critically work through, whatever's coming at you and, fighting for resources, can you share what is the greatest challenge that you're faced with right now and how you're working through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from a military standpoint, I'm obviously very biased on what air power and space power does. I mean, the Army will deploy to certain locations, and the Navy will deploy to certain locations, but the Air Force and the Space Force are everywhere. We're in every theater. We've been in every conflict. We are the constant. And I don't think resource wise that our Department of the Air Force is receiving the resources that it needs, proportionately speaking to the threat that we face. We're the smallest and the oldest that we've ever been, and we need to change that immediately. Um, as chairman, you mentioned I was chairman of the Republican Study Committee. What is that? Well, it's a 189 member caucus committee, policy committee. It's the
The largest
largest.
one, right? Okay.
It's
Yeah.
huge. It's the largest committee in Congress. And we meet weekly with cabinet members and um, other leaders to discuss policy. But this has been something that I've been passionate about, which we have to take advantage of an environment where some more resources are being put towards our military. And I want to make sure that a larger portion of those go to the Department of the Air Force to meet the threat. And that's just a neat opportunity. That it's a competitive election. I had to get elected by my peers, 188 other congressmen and women from across the country. I had to run an election to get elected to it. And now trying to communicate to them why the business of air and space power is so important. But we're slowly but surely getting there.
Well, I'm not sure where you have time when you're doing so many things. You're on the road meeting with your constituents, you're leading, these major committees, the board of visitors as chair. Can you talk about how you're balancing, you always talked about being your family is really important to you. How are you balancing that? What does that look like for someone in a leadership role?
Well, it's obviously the biggest challenge that any of us face, which is making sure that you take care of the most fundamental and important piece of your life, which is your family. And being gone, I mean, I go to Washington, D.C. on Monday and generally come home Thursday or Friday, and that's about 3 weeks out of every four. So my wife is the most important piece of this because she allows me to do this, and I couldn't do it without her, honestly. And then secondly, we had a scare this summer because two of my girls were at Camp Mystic.
Mm.
And, that really brought things back to such a fundamental level that, my number one job on this earth is to be a husband and a father, a person of faith. And I will tell you that was a transformational moment in just in my life, because when you have two daughters that thankfully came home, and then you see 27 others that didn't, that they knew that we knew the families and we were close to, that this has put everything back into perspective, that the service that I'm doing should be focused on a foundation of family and faith, and that none of it matters if you don't take care of that.
So, what does that look like in how you lead? How does that shape the decisions you make in your role in Congress as a reservist? And then for our listeners, how do they put those important things first in the midst of having to make other decisions professionally?
I think a lot of it is maybe not so much the what in the decision, but it's the how you carry yourself. And on the other side of the aisle, I mean, I'm going to fight policies that I don't agree with all day long. But I think the how I do that, what I want my daughters to know is that they had a dad that um, was very firm in his beliefs. So I think that's, when I look at it kind of like from the okay, what's important? Okay, being a good dad, not just saying the right things, but actually going and carrying those out. I think the how you carry them out is really important. And then, on the specifics of legislation, there are things that if I believe in taking care of the American family, then there are things that I'm going to advocate for. And not to make this too political of a discussion, but I think you can see through my track record that I have focused on those things that would help strengthen the family.
The how is really it's part of your legacy, right? And I think that's what your children are seeing as well, in the way that you do what you do. And I think as leaders, that's something really important to be thinking about. So I'm really thankful that you shared that example. Um, have you found that your leadership style has evolved, or has it already always been kind of rooted in, who you've been, and you've just kind of tweaked it a little bit? Or have you seen yourself evolve more than you'd have expected?
Yes, it has evolved, and I hope for the better. We'd have to ask others what they think of that. But look, growing up professionally in a fighter squadron, there were 3 tenets that even though I didn't go to weapons school, they teach you. That's to be humble, credible, and approachable. I mean, think about that. Those are the core tenets of who our lead warriors are. And that is not what you see when you think of politicians. You think, well, they're braggadocious and annoying and, okay, and I hope I don't fall into that category. I need to do some self-reflection every once in a while. But I've got a staff of almost 40 people, and I have 434 other colleagues that you have to work with. So you better believe that you've got to be humble, because there are people who are better than you in every category. You better believe that being approachable in this job is really important, because people are going to come to you and they're going to need something, or you're going to need something from them. And if you don't have the credibility of what you're talking about or what you're leading, then you're not going to get anything done. And so I've really had to work on all 3 of those things since I was elected, to make sure that tying that to a servant leadership model. We started out in 2021, and I told my team, I said, we are going to do everything we possibly can to make other people that I am working with, other congressmen and women, better. And they said, wait, what? And I said, yeah, this isn't about me getting the limelight. We will get plenty of limelight, but let's work on giving other people the credit, giving other people the opportunities, calling on their expertise, pushing them up, and it will all work out. And we will achieve everything we wanted to achieve for the district that I represent. And it was just like this lightning bolt it was so antithetical to the way that many people in Congress think. And I am not saying that we have changed the world, but when you're elected to basically a conference-wide position like I am, then you really have hard conversations with people. And those conversations, people said, you know what, you've helped me out. I'm going to vote for you. And that meant everything.
Humble, approachable, credible. What great lessons for our leaders. And I think that translates across anything you're doing. Of the 3, it seems that credible would probably be the hardest to achieve, right? It's a time-based thing. How would you recommend that our leaders, especially those that are growing in their leadership roles, achieve that when they don't necessarily have the time, right?
It's so hard. But that grit, that determination, I mean, the study, all the things we learned, it's like they give you the academic instructors are like a torture chamber, because they know you can't study everything. So you have to prioritize, which is a lesson I think I still draw on today. But I think that credibility comes from, if you're going to be an expert in something, you've got to study it, you've got to know it, and people have to trust you. So when you tell them something, it has to be the truth, and they have to know, well, I don't know that particular policy issue, but I know Pfluger does, because, he did that in his career, or he studied that. So I think that grit and that determination and the prioritization of your time is so important. You can't do it all. We just can't. You have to make a choice, and those choices have to then go towards the goals that you're setting for yourself.
Excellent, excellent lessons. So you've accomplished so much since 2021. You know, what's next? What are you trying to work towards next?
I mean, there's so many different like policy issues I'm not going to bore you with. Let's just talk about the big picture, the elephant in the room, which is how divided our country is. And it's heartbreaking to see. I think back to like the aftermath of 9/11. I literally 9/11 happened 2 weeks prior to my pilot training graduation. You as a class of 99, were right in the same boat. I mean, our professional careers were turned upside down, but our country came together. And that was kind of I think that was the best thing, to see how many people that were divided on whatever lines kind of came together. We're very divided, and it is hard to see. And from I want to see an end of the radical sides of our parties and a normal conversation. We should be able to have a normal debate in Congress about whatever issues of spending and things like that. And we should be able to then slap each other on the back and say, yeah, good job, you won that one, or, good job, I won this one. Yeah, that should be kind of the norm. And I've got so many good friends who are Democrats that it's there, but the pull to radicalization is it's alive and well. And to be honest, this is why we need more Academy graduates who are doing this type of work, whether it's running for local office or running for Congress or Senate or whatever, because we get it. We get it from being a part of something that was greater than ourselves, and being a part of a mission that it wasn't about it was literally about the team of success. And I think it's veterans that are in these leadership positions that are going to help be a part of this. So that really, I really do want to see that. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to fight tooth and nail for policy that I believe in, which is partisan at times, and I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is demonizing somebody for having a different belief. Let's go fight the merits of it, but not the character of the other person.
Thank you for sharing that. I think, you know, just putting the elephant on the table, I think is really important. That's what it is. It's about conversation. It's about dialogue. And so thank you for sharing that for sure. Um, this has been an incredible conversation. We've kind of navigated different parts of your career, your leadership journey. Maybe if I could ask you this, what is something you're doing every day, Congressman Pfluger, to be better?
I think in faith life, really trying to tie in spiritually, and to not be the one in control, trying to be more present in my family's life. I'm going to give you 3 or 4. So, just being more intentional, putting the phone down. Like if I'm going to sit down with my kids and be there, because I could be on the phone 24 hours a day. So put the phone down, talk to my wife, be engaged. And that's really, that I think that's a challenge for anybody who is in, any adult right now, quite frankly, but especially those that are in leadership positions, which all of our graduates are. And so just put the phone down and being engaged. And it's hard. It's like, oh, I got to take care of this. And I got to call that person back and we've got to do this. But, that is, I think that is probably the number one thing that then allows a stronger faith life, a stronger relationship with my family. Physically, still taking the Air Force PT test.
Okay.
And, got a 99 last year, was very proud of that. And so
I
trying to stay physically fit. It's a
That's
challenge.
outstanding.
There are some other graduates who have challenged me with that. You may know Joel Neeb,
Oh,
who is a
yes.
classmate of yours.
Thor. Yes.
Thor is
Yes.
awesome, and
Yes.
he's been such an inspiration. I could name 100 people, but he's a really good inspiration to so many people. And on all the things that the things that I answered for your question, he's been a good inspiration on.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Yes. Well, thank you for that. Can you also share, knowing what you know now, through the years that you've experienced, your hardships, the triumphs, what would you share with our growing leaders that they can do today to help them be stronger down the road?
I think some self-reflection, like how do you see yourself and how does the world see you? And does it match up? Because if it's different, if your opinion of yourself is higher than that of what other people are thinking and your work ethic and what you're bringing to the table, then you need to do some self-reflection. And I go back to my career as a fighter pilot, which was perfect for politics. You got to learn to work as a team. You have people debriefing you, and there's critical thoughts on your actions of how you perform. But I think any leader needs to first have the grit to be able to stick with it. It's not always the best person that gets the job, but I can promise you the person who keeps seeking that job and has that drive, they're going to get there. That has been the story of my life. And self-reflection to go, what's stopping me from getting there is probably the key. As long as you have that grit, that self-reflection, to have some clarity for whatever goal you want to achieve. That's my humble opinion of what I would tell myself 15 years ago.
Wow. And I think that does kind of give us a moment to just sit in it and think about that, as we are, trying to be our best selves and to continue to evolve as leaders. What a great way to do that, right? Just reflect, some self-reflection. I want to make sure we have an opportunity. If there's anything that I didn't ask you that you feel is really important to share with our listeners, what would that be?
Well, there were a couple of things. Number one, I was trying to think back because you're class of 99 and I'm
Yes.
class of 2000 on whether or not I had to get in the front leaning rest and recite John Stuart Mill's poem or not. Yeah, I can't remember that. So maybe I snuck by and did that. But
I'm definitely a front-leaning rest kind of gal. I pretty strong abs. I can handle that.
I'm going to go back to how important our institution is, because we're in that other dimension. We're in the air, in the space domain. We're solving problems in our professional career that, think about where we've come since the Wright brothers demonstrated we could fly. And now, all the things that we're doing in air and space, and that's because of our graduates. And, I really want to have a call out to our graduates that your leadership in a variety of ways is needed. It's needed in the business community, in Fortune 500 companies. It's needed in your local communities. It's needed at the national level of politics. There are several candidates for Congress right now who are graduates. I'm helping them. And I will help anybody. I don't care what party you are. Of course, I have my favorite, but I will help any person who is looking to run for something like this. This is what I know now. But we really do need your leadership in order to bring the temperature down, to unite our country, to make sure that we're going to be successful. It's not if, it's a matter of when we're going to face that next big, truly existential threat and challenge to our country. And guess what? I trust the people that were right there next to me in the front leaning rest, reciting all of those quotes and having to do a little bit harder of a standard in our 4 years of education than other institutions. And so I trust our graduates, but we need you, and we really need you to take that opportunity and serve in any possible way that you can.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a perfect way, a call to action, so to speak, for all of us, the service after the service. So this has been incredible, Congressman Pfluger. Thank you for your time today.
Well, Navir, thank you for reaching so many graduates, and looking forward to beating Army and Navy again next year.
That's right. We'll do that next year. Well, as I reflect on this conversation, one theme really rises above others: courage, the grit. Not just the courage we often associate with the battlefield or moments of crises, but the quiet, steady courage that it takes to lead with conviction every day. Congressman Pfluger reminded us that true leadership means standing firm in your values, even when the path may be uncertain or the stakes may be high. It's the kind of courage that doesn't seek comfort, but instead answers to responsibility. So as you think about your own leadership journey, ask yourself, where is courage calling you? Where is that grit going to take you? Whether it's in the workplace, in your community, or your personal life, lean into those moments. Because courage, real, principled, humble courage, is what transforms good leaders into great ones. Thank you for listening to this edition of Long Blue Leadership. If you know someone who needs encouraging words in their leadership journey, please share this podcast with them as well. I'm Navir Walkowitz. Until next time.